Here's a classic data manipulation interview question that catches many people off guard. How do you pivot or melt data in Pandas? This one's all about reshaping your data for analysis. Think of it as changing the way your table looks. You're not changing the data itself, just how it's organized. Let's start with the basics. There are two main formats you'll deal with in data analysis: wide format and long format. In a wide format, each variable has its own column. It's easy for humans to read, like a spreadsheet. But for analysis, especially in time series or statistical modeling, we often need the data in a long format, where each observation is represented as a pair of variable and value. And that's where pivot and melt come in. When you use pivot, you're transforming data from long to wide. It's like spreading rows into columns. For example, imagine you have monthly sales data for different products. Each row represents one product's revenue in a specific month. Using the pivot function, you can make each product its own column, so you can easily compare revenues side by side. If you need to summarize or aggregate, the pivot table function does the same, but also lets you group and apply functions like sum or average. On the other hand, melt does the exact opposite. It converts wide data back into long format. You might use this when your dataset has multiple time columns, say January, February, and March sales for each customer, and you want to combine them into one column called month with another column for spend. So here's the intuition. Pivot spreads your data out, great for readability and quick comparisons. Melt stacks it back down, perfect for modeling, visualization, and flexible analysis. The key takeaway: mastering these two transforms helps you move fluidly between what's human-friendly and what's analysis-friendly. Let's bring this to life with a quick example, and I'll explain it in plain English instead of reading code. Suppose you have sales data in a long format, with columns like month, product, and revenue. Each row shows the revenue of one product in 1 month. To pivot this data, you'd group by month and create separate columns for each product. In Pandas, you can do this with the pivot function by telling it which column holds your index, which one should become the new columns, and which column contains the values you want to fill in. Now, each row represents 1 month, and each product has its revenue neatly aligned across columns. If you need to combine multiple rows for the same month and product, you can use the pivot table function, which works just like pivot but lets you apply an aggregation. For example, summing up revenue when there are multiple entries. Now let's reverse it. Say you have customer data in a wide format with columns for each month's spending: January spend, February spend, March spend, and you want to analyze trends over time. That's when you use melt. It takes all those monthly columns and stacks them into 2 columns, one for the month name and one for the spend amount. So instead of multiple spend columns, you get a single clean structure where each row represents one customer's spend in 1 month. In short, pivot makes your data wider for easy viewing. Melt makes it longer for flexible analysis. Both are essential for reshaping your data efficiently in Pandas. Here's how I'd answer this in an interview. I use the pivot function in Pandas to convert long data into wide format, for example, spreading product sales across columns, and I use melt when I need to transform wide data into long format, such as turning monthly spend columns into a single column for analysis. I also use pivot tables when I need aggregation like sum or average. These tools make reshaping large datasets intuitive and efficient in Pandas. That's a clean, confident answer that shows you don't just know the syntax, you understand the data logic behind it. Remember, interviews aren't about memorizing functions, they're about demonstrating how you think about data transformation. If you can explain pivot and melt like this, you've already proven that you think like a data scientist.